Welcome to the ICPSR webinar on SDA. SDA stands for Survey Documentation and Analysis and is a tool that allows users to analyze data online without having to download files. In this webinar, we will locate studies that have SDA as an option, introduce SDA and its features, and demonstrate how to analyze data with it. As we have time, we'll take your questions between the introduction of SDA and the demonstration of it. My name is Sue Hodge. I'm with Instructional Development and Research, and I'm here with David Thomas of the MDRC, and I'm going to give you the introduction, and David's going to do the demonstration. But first, a few housekeeping notes. We're often asked if the copies of the webinar or the slides that we're using can be found on our website, and they can. They're on the ICPSR webinar library, which can be found on the Courses and Learning Tools tab on the main ICPSR webpage at www.icpsr.umich.edu. And this is the control panel that's been put on your computer by GoToWebinar. It has a tendency to minimize itself, and it by default will locate in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You can move it as you see fit. And if perchance you should close out of the webinar, you can rejoin the webinar by going to the email that you received, your registration email, and then following the links back to us. You cannot disconnect the webinar from happening, though, so no worries there. Also on your control pad, let's see if I can find it. There's a section here for questions, and if you type in a question and hit send, it'll pop up on our little screen here as well, and when we get to that point, we will be able to take your questions. So before we begin, general membership rules apply to studies with SDA. If you're affiliated with a member institution, have a MyData account, are on campus, or have authenticated your MyData account from campus in the last 6 months, you can access and use all studies available in SDA. If you're not affiliated with a member institution and wish to use a study that is freely available, you're welcome to access them as well. Please be aware that there are some differences between the ways archives handle authentication, and we're going to cover that a bit later. In addition to let you perform analyses online, SDA will help you to make educated decisions about the studies that you are considering. You can browse the data and the codebook, view the variables, run frequencies, and other descriptive statistics before you download the study. When you choose to download a study that SDA is an option with, you can subset the data before downloading it to save space. It's not uncommon for data files to be very large, sometimes a gig or more, and SDA will let you pare that down to a more manageable size. All studies that have SDA as an option will have an online analysis URL on the search results page. It's beneath the name of the study and the PI for that study. So please note, if you don't see online analysis here, the study does not offer SDA. If you wish, you can request that the study you're considering be rendered so that it is SDA compatible. I can let you know about the likelihood that it can be offered in SDA. To make the request, send me an email with the study name and number, and send your request to netmail@icpsr.umich.edu. This email address will be displayed at the end of the webinar. An alternate way of finding SDA-enabled studies is to search for the feature first. Go to Data, then Browse, and on the Browse page, look for Online Data Analysis. When you get to the Online Data Analysis page, the first link is View SDA Studies. This is an alphabetical list of all ICPSR holdings that have the SDA feature. Beneath that are links to areas which also offer studies in SDA. These studies are organized in an alphabetical manner, and if you choose to use this link or any of these links, you will need to log into your My Data account before you can access the study. Accessing the study through some archives will allow you to choose to authenticate anonymously. The archives that require the use of My Data accounts are Aging, that's the NACDA archive, National Archive of Criminal Justice Data, and Criminal Justice, which is National Archive of Criminal Justice Data. The other archives, Child Care and Early Education, which is Research Connections, Demography, which is DSDR, Education, which is the International Archive of Education Data, IAED, and Substance Abuse and Mental Health, which is SAMHSA, allow you to authenticate anonymously. To locate archives websites for anonymous authentication, go back to the main web page, click on Data, then look for Archives. This will display an alphabetical list of archives housed at ICPSR. Scroll to the archive that you need and follow that archive's directions for anonymous authentication and locating and accessing SDA-enabled studies. Let's go back to the ICPSR online analysis page and pick a study so that we can demonstrate how SDA works. First of all, you can see that I have logged into my Data account. I will click on the View SDA Studies so we can pick a study to illustrate the process. There are 579 results returned from our search of studies with the SDA feature. The first one, study number 20960, ICPSR's 2002 State Legislative Survey, will be a good one to demonstrate the process. On the next page, this page gives you the links to the data sets in the study that are enabled for SDA. And on this page, there is only one link for this study. This tells me that there is only one data set in the study. If there were multiple data sets, there would be a list of studies, a list of links for you to choose the different data sets. The terms of use are the same for all data that are downloaded or used in SDA. At the bottom of the page, there's an Agree button. Not surprisingly, if you elect not to agree to the terms, you won't be able to use the data. But please read the terms before agreeing. Well, it's been my pleasure to talk to you today about SDA, and I'm going to give the balance of the presentation to David Thomas of the MDRC to demonstrate the features. Remember, if you have questions, you can go to the question section on your control pad and type in a question and hit send, and that'll show up on our panel here, and we'll be able to answer a question or two for you. Thank you very much.
Hello. As Sue said, this is David Thomas. I'm with ICPSR. I'm in the Minority Data Resource Center, and I'm also a processor and stuff like that. So I'm going to take you out from the presentation and take you to a live demo. So hold on for a second. We'll just have to go out. Bear with me. You'll get a live demo. So you would go to icpsr.umich.edu. You go there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just start from where Sue left off. So we're going to look at the 2002 legislative survey. So you go into the search box, and you go there, legislative survey, and you click. And now once again, you see that we're there, and I click on online analysis. Then I click on the other link. Now, since this is a ICPSR membership study, you have to put in your My Data new user account information. That authenticates us. Remember that for SDA and some of the other archives, you can do anonymous authentication. So, as Sue stated before, and I want to reiterate, reading the terms of use is very important because this says what you're agreeing to. You particularly should pay attention to the redistribution of data and the citing of data. So after you've read all of this, you scroll down, you agree to it, and that says you can use the study. All right, here we go. The first thing, all right, now you see we have all these different options. One thing I like to do when starting to work in SDA is I like to open the codebook in a separate window. So I just clicked on codebook. If everyone saw that, I clicked here, and that gave me this. Now, in the ICPSR SDA codebooks, what you have are, one, you have the summary, like you would in the normal data description page if you were to download the study. You have processing notes here. You also have any weight notes or any other notes that you might need, and also appendices. Now each study is a little different, so not every study will have an appendix, not every study will have the same amount of notes, not every study is weighted, but that gives you the general information. Another thing to note is that with SDA and some other archives, sometimes it is an abbreviated codebook, and it just depends on the study and how much documentation and information there is involved in the study. Now, I'm going to take you to analysis. So if you run your cursor over analysis, you'll see that it comes up and you can run frequencies or cross tabulations, you can do means, you can do correlations, multiple regression. So it's a very robust program. We're going to keep it kind of basic. So the first thing I'm going to start with are frequencies. And so let's say you want to know, well, what do I want to look up? I want to know, well, is the study going to be relevant to what I'm looking for? Maybe I'm interested in doing research on a particular population. The cool thing about it is right over here, you have a list, and you can click on, these are variables here. We're going to go to demographic variables. And you see right here that Z28 is race and ethnicity. So I click on Z28, and if you see it goes to the variable selection area right here. And now, let's say we're like, well, I'm not sure. I just want to see what the unweighted counts would be. You can click on View right here. And it comes up in a separate window. and it gives you raw counts, like I said, unweighted, with labels. So I'm like, okay, 1 is white, 2 is black, 3 is other. Good to know. All right. So now I say, well, I'd like to get the weighted frequencies for this. So I take this variable, Z28, and I put it in the row column. If you notice, the row variable is required. What's optional is the column variable that you use to do a crosstab, as well as the control and selection filters, which we will get to shortly. So I need to get this variable over here in order to do my basic descriptive analysis for the frequencies of Z28, race, ethnicity. I have a few ways of doing that. I can click, the easiest way is to click this row button here, and it goes right there. Or I can type it in. Or I forgot the other way. Oh, I can copy it and paste it. That being said, once you've chosen it from this side, it's much easier just to click row. So now I have the row. I'll turn on the weighting because I want to get, I want to do some real analysis. So remember, if it says there's a weight there to be used in all analyses, then use the weight. I have that. I can decide what kind of charts I want, but we're just going to keep it basic for right now. And I run the table. And now you see I have my frequency distribution. Gives me what the weight range is. I have my weighted counts. You have your column percentage because, well, you only have columns. And you have a stacked bar chart. Now, some other things we could do with this. One, we can change the chart. You can have a bar chart, which I think is more useful. You can make it horizontal or 3D. I'll click on 3D because I think it's cool. See, 3D. Not as exciting, but cute colors. You can have percentages. You can add column percent, row percentages, total percentages. Another thing you can add is question text and color coding. Question text for the race and ethnicity variable isn't as useful, but if we go to a different variable, such as Z11, and we add it to the row, but let's just go in. So when you do the view, now you'll see the description of the variable, and you can see the question text and all the frequencies here. But now, I'll do this. I'll run the table. And you get the label, but then as you get toward the bottom, you get your frequencies here. You get your chart here. But you also here have the question text. What percent of voters in your district do you think feel closer to the Republican Party? So now that we've covered the real basic stuff, now let's do something where, let's say I want to know religious affiliation, so throw that in row, but I only want to know it for Caucasians, or as listed in this, white. So then I say, okay, I select that, it's still in my window, but I don't want to put it to row, I want to put it to filter. I'm going to put it right there, so I click that, that's there. So then I choose the value that I want to filter by. So I already know that I want it Caucasian, and in this, that value is 1. So then I just simply type the 1 right there, and then I run the table. Once again, I get my column percentages, my weighted totals, and I get my 3D bar chart. Now, if I wanted to see it by all races, I would take it out of the selection filter, click it into column, run the table again, then I run a crosstab, and I get all the information for all races. You see it has white, black, other, then it has the religions. One other thing we might do, we might say, I think I like to collapse or really group some other variables. Oh, I have a question. Someone asked, what is SDA? Well, SDA is a substance abuse mental health data archive. This particular archive is for if you're interested in looking at studies that are archived based on, well, substance abuse and mental health. After I'm done with this study, I'll take you to the SDA site so you can see it. But it is one thing that differentiates SDA from some of the other ICPSR archives is that SDA is federally funded, so therefore anyone can go and download data, as we mentioned before, so you don't need that My Data authentication. You can do anonymous authentication. All right, so hold on, I have another question. In frequencies, can you only do one variable at a time? Well, that is a good question. So I guess you're asking, could you do like a range of variables? Oddly enough, I haven't gotten that question that often. So we're going to do something that I would generally not do in a demonstration, and that's wing it. So we'll find out right now. No. So in this case, if you wanted something where you had just like, a full range of frequencies, I think you'd have to go into and download the study or something like that. There are other ways in which you can do things like that, like, grab it and see ranges of variables. But I do not believe just in plain frequencies here, you can do that. I'm sorry. But it was a good question. I have more questions. All right. Can you download or copy tables into Microsoft Word? You could. Let me run through and do a table. But I think what you would end up doing would be just saving it as a bitmap, and that way, and then you can just load your bitmaps into wherever. So, chart, you save it as a bitmap, and then I'm not going to go back in, but that's what you would do. You would save it as the bitmap, and then you could see it, and then you would just put it into Word, stuff like that. Okay, we have one other question. Can you show me how to select cases? Yes, I am getting to that. We'd be able to use the pen button to add multiple variables for frequencies. Probably, I don't remember who asked that question, but that seems totally logical and something I should have thought of. So there you go. I love to be corrected because I think that's useful so that we can both learn something. So that's great. Thank you for the question there. Can the data be downloaded into Excel? No. This is something where you're doing it here. If you wanted to download the data into Excel, it's better off to download the data like through our normal download, and I'll get to that. And then you can just download it as an Excel file, as a text file, or if you load it as SPSS, I know Excel can read SPSS files. Someone just, I think, put it out for the rest of us to know that on a Mac, it's easy to copy and paste from SDA to Word by doing a screen capture. Thank you. And also, just point of information, you can run frequencies on multiple variables by including each variable separated by a comma or space in the row, which we saw by the append variable. Hopefully, I got all the questions. And now I'll do some selecting of cases. So, like I said, so going back into it, I was in the middle of my demo and I was going to say, okay, well, now we might want to do recodes or whatever, but like we could do the selection again. So this is going to give me race and ethnicity, but only if gender here is female, which is 1 in this case. So we'll run the table. So this is race if gender equals female. So that's how you could select cases that way. Another thing you might want to do, going back to religious affiliation, we might want to do some on-the-fly recoding. So let's say we're like, well, I want, well, let's delete that. You know what you want. You want that. You want, once again, religious affiliation. But you want to do a little bit of recoding. So then you can do this. You put in parentheses, and you're going to do R for recode, then you do a colon, and then I'll say that 1 will equal 1, followed by a semicolon, and then I'll say that 2 equals values 2 through 6. So this will give me frequencies so that it's going to recode things that say, okay, so 1 will stay Catholic, but 2 will become everything that's what we'll call non-Catholic. So we've done an on-the-fly recode right there. But if we go back, see, it's just on the fly, so you can see it, you can do it, but then it's not permanent. However, if you have more questions about recoding, you could always click on the help section here, and this gives you a bunch of information about temporarily recoding and everything you might want to know. In addition to, it has a whole list of specific topics and everything. If you wanted to, you could go back up to the top and do Recode Variables, and in this way you would create a whole nother variable. We're going to call it Z30_2. You can choose whether or not to replace that variable if it already exists, and then we say what variables we want to use in our recode. So we're going to say Z30_1, which was religious affiliation, and Z27, which was gender. So I'm going to say that the value 1, and I'll call this female_C, and for variable 1, that will equal 1, and for variable 2, that will equal 1. Whoops. I hit return when I didn't want to. So then we're going to do a value 2. And for variable 1, which remember is our religious variable, so 1 is Catholic, variable 2 is gender, so that's 2 for male. Then we'll do 3. And we'll do female non-Catholic, and that's 2 through 6, and 1, and then 4 will be male non-Catholic, male underscore non-Catholic, also 2 through 6, and that will be 2. I'm going to skip all this for the sake of just time, and I'll start my recoding. I'm going to check to make sure I have everything I want in there. I've created the new C30_2 variable. I've told it what variables I want. It's variable 1, variable 2, which corresponds to our rules down here. We have that. We gave a range. Now we'll start the recoding. Okay, since I made that mistake earlier, I have to replace it now. And now you'll see we have new variables with labels. We have C and non-C. Tells you what the output was, the ranges, the rules, everything. So now we'll go to download. Earlier, if you recall, there was a question about downloading the data into Excel right from SDA. Well, and we said, no, you can't do that. What you can do is go back to the ICPSR original download page through SDA, which is where I went here. Then I clicked there, and I got this. And I can access the data and documentation. And right here, I can download whatever I would need to download. So a tab delimited data file would be the ideal type of file to download into Excel, or you can choose the SAS transport files or Stata system files, SPSS system files, or ASCII files with any of your syntax files of your statistical package choice, like SAS, SPSS, Stata. And it's the same way you would always download from ICPSR. And you would just add to the data cart, then you can review your cart, and you can download the data cart. We covered the codebook earlier, but just going back, I wanted to make a quick note of this. When you're in the codebook, what you'll have is your variable list. You have group headings, the standard variable list, which looks like this. So now you can see labeling as well, and the alphabetical order. And here's the alphabetical order. So then you could go into it, and you can click on any any variable with the question, and then you'll see the question text, and once again, the raw frequencies unweighted. So if you want to have valid frequencies, remember, you'd have to go back into the program, run the tables with the weights on. This is a very important aspect of it. Now, if you recall, there was a question about SAMDA. So we're going to go back in to the ICPSR site, and I'm going to take you to SAMDA. So I'll go, following Sue's instructions, I'll go to Data, I'll click on Archives. I see my list of archives. I want substance abuse and mental health. And that gives me a few. Then I go to the SAMDA archive. Then right here, I have the SAMDA webpage, and I can go through, and let's choose, I clicked on online analysis, and now I can see some current studies that are going on. So I'll look at the National Survey of Drug Use and Health. You see we have multiple years. I'll click on that. And if you recall from Sue's demonstration, she mentioned that if you have multiple options for a particular study, that you'll have multiple links. So in the 2002 legislative survey, we only have one option. But here you see we have many. So I choose to click on the National Survey on Drug Use and Health 2007. Then I diligently read through my terms of use. Then I agree to it. But once I do that, now it looks just like the 2002 legislative survey. So I have the same options. I can do the same things. I can do the same sort of downloading. One difference, so it has the description, but in this one, it'll tell you that the PDF version of the codebook is more complete than the SDA version of the codebook. So you want to pay attention to that and note that so you know that in some cases you might have to go back, for example, through the dataset and documentation, and then you can just click Browse Documentation. Hopefully everyone saw that. I went in. We'll make it bigger for everyone. I went in and I browsed and I clicked it. And I was here. I clicked on Browse Documentation. And I can go right in and get the codebook right here. Or I can get the questionnaire or whatever I might need. And so I have no other questions. So I am done with my brief and really basic demo. Hopefully this was helpful. Oh, but I do have another question. Someone asked a very important question. How do you handle the complex survey design issue in this national data? Doesn't it require several weighting variables to get it done? The answer to that is yes, it does require several weighting variables to get it done. And so, in some of the SAMDA, I'm going back because I probably breezed over it, but there is a place where it says that you have your complex sample design caution. So you can go and you can do that. And currently, and I know I'm flipping all around, going back and forth, but please bear with me. Some of it you can do here, but not more importantly, but another issue is that ICPSR is in the process currently of working with Berkeley, who are the creators of SDA, to handle just that sort of issue so that people can do, the complex sample design using multiple weights, stuff like that. This particular study, you see, we have this whole list of weights. And you would get counts, but we are in the process of creating a system that better handles complex weighting. All right, we have a question about what is the value of this versus other options such as Nestar or SPSS. Okay, so the value of this versus SPSS is that you don't need SPSS on your machine, so you can do these analyses on the fly. Using Nestar, we made as an organization a choice to use SDA over Nestar. We have access to Nestar. Some studies do use Nestar, but overall, we as an organization made a choice to use SDA. The same thing like for SAS or Stata, it's just that you don't need to have SAS or Stata on your machine to do these analyses. I'm coming with the questions. I apologize, but I'm missing some questions here. Is there any research on time that students need to master this system and how that compares to NSTAR, SPSS, and Stata? There probably is. I don't have that research or those answers about time on what it would take to master versus, this versus SPSS or Stata and NSTAR. As far as SPSS and Stata, like I said, really the thing is not so much a time saving as much as the fact that it's resource saving, in that if you are at a place where you do not have access to statistical software right on your machine, you could use this. Okay. Any word on when the 2008 General Social Survey will be available? I do not know. I know we receive it when we receive it. I am not the person who works on that. If you send an email to us through our user support, we can get you more information on that. Comments on using SDA with students. I do not remember having any direct comments. I have demoed SDA in the class, but just not as an instructor, but just as a demo to classes, but they are undergrads, on using SDA. And overall, there was a positive response to it. What they enjoyed was the fact that they did not have to have SPSS, SAS, or Stata on their machine in order to use it. And then, it takes a little bit of hands-on, but once they get used to it, I think it works pretty well. When you recode a variable, is the recoded variable available for your whole session? I believe when you do it through create variables, yes it is. When you do it through on the fly like I did, no it's not. And so that would be the difference there. Another thing we didn't touch on today, but might later, and there was an earlier webinar about the MDRC that talked about this. Within the MDRC, we have a tool where you can get the syntax for recoding variables as well. So you could do that as well. And it's not only MDRC studies will have what we're calling the MDRC SDA tools, but that's where you'll go with that. I think I have all the questions. Well, another question. Is multiple response available? To be honest, I'd need more information when you ask that question. Is multiple response available? So whoever asked that question, hopefully they can give me more clarification. I'll come back to that. Can you save the analysis online or to a computer? Yes, you can. Let's see. You can export it out. So let's grab that, grab that. Hold, please. Actually, how would you export it out?
I would run it, and then there's an option to save as.
Bear with me. I apologize.
I think what you do is, if you right-click on where's the frequency? Save as. Export, there it is.
So what I did was I went, and then I have an option here that says export to Microsoft Excel. Oh yeah, I right-clicked. Then it said export to Microsoft Excel. And then it takes a little bit of a while, but it should come up. SPSS, another question, has an MR option. Does SDA offer something similar? That would be back to the multiple response question. To my knowledge, it does not have anything that says multiple response such. So I guess the answer is no. But you're welcome to explore SDA and prove me wrong again. Are saved recodes kept in a joint space of all users, or do users have some individual space for saving new variables? The answer is no and no to both of those. If you do like I said, if you save your Recode syntax, like through the tool where you can save it out, or if you just remember it, you can write it down or something, that's how you would save it. But no, at this time, there's no repository for the recodes or anything like that. What does the complex sample design under the table options do? I'm sorry, I'm looking for the complex sample design under the table options. Well, that would help you know. I'll be honest with you, team. I am not sure exactly how complex sample design works in SDA versus SRS, or simple design, I guess. I assume, so I could be wrong on this, I will assume that with complex sample design, you want to choose this when it tells you, so like the SAMHSA studies tell you to do that, and that's how you get more accurate results. So we're probably closer to being able to using complex sample design than I initially led you to believe. Can you export your session syntax for a record of analysis? Maybe you already asked. Going back to it, like I said, in the MDRC tools, you can do some of that. We don't have a really efficient way where you just, push it exactly out like that. Since the question came up, I will go to a particular study so you can actually see what I'm talking about. If I go back to ICPSR and I go to a study that I know, this is Latino National Survey, and I'll go to our additional analysis tools. And so you have here, you have your subset option where you can do subsets or something here, and then you add your variable. And let's say I only want Cubans. And Central Americans, and then I want it for SPSS. I can subset the data, and then you'll see right here, it'll give me the SPSS file and the data file, stuff like that. Accidentally went out. So then you can go back in and you can do things like that. Or If you come back out a little bit further, you can pull out sample characteristics, and then you can assess what's out there that way. Or like I said earlier, you could subset and I believe actually I wanted to do Recode. I could name a variable Cuban, choose my ethnicity variable, add my Recode. Well, actually, you choose your sample code. And then it could give you your sample code wherever. And you'll see right here, now this was my little mistake, but you'll see then you can do it that way. I would demonstrate a regression analysis, but that's a little more higher tech or further along than what the purpose of this is. So at this time, I will not demonstrate a regression analysis. Sorry. Okay, it looks like the questions are done. So here we'll end our webinar. Thank you for attending. The slides and video recordings of the webinar will be available in about 2 days. Should you need any information, you can send it. You can ask questions at the NetMail address, or you can sign up for future webinars here. Thank you for attending. Hopefully this was helpful. I know there were times where we were like, well, we're not sure, but hopefully, you got at least a little flavor of what SDA can do and why you might want to use it. I have one hand raised. Don't know. Will there be future sessions demonstrating regressions using SDA? Yes, that is in the works, so that we can have that for more advanced users. Once again, thank you for attending, and have a great day.